Hey, what's going on, guys? Today I want to do a walkthrough video of the Yoda Coach, which is right behind me. It's very similar to a Bandwagon. In fact, if you've seen my Bandwagon walkthrough video on YouTube, this video is going to be very similar to that. I'm going to show you some of the features on the exterior, in the cab, and then obviously a tour of the interior of the living space as well. If you have any questions about anything you see in this video, please be sure to let me know in the comments. And in case you want to know, for context, we are on tour currently. We'll be living in this thing for the next 40 days or so. Initial quick tour of the exterior of the Yoda Coach. Again, if you have ever spent time in a Bandwagon, it's very similar. You'll notice the windows are a little bit different on this from a Bandwagon, and it'll make sense kind of how they're placed once we get to the interior tour. One difference as well is that instead of a Freightliner, this is a Mack truck. It's a little bit more narrow than a Bandwagon is. At least it feels like that to me. On the driver's side, very similar to a Bandwagon, additional storage, generator access points. And it is just like the Bandwagon, a double, 2 wheels, total 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 wheels. Yoda Coach does also have a hitch. It is actually a bit lower to the ground than the Bandwagon. With the Bandwagon, typically we had to have a 5-inch drop or so. But as you can see here, it's basically flush with where the hitch is on the coach. And this is a, I believe, 6x12 trailer. You know, we have no major issues with pulling anything, and it's been great so far. Now, at the time of filming this video, this is a 2026 model Yoda Coach. So, you know, depending on if you're considering getting one of these for tour or for some other traveling needs, you know, you might have a different model, but just be sure to keep that in mind. This is the 2026 model that we are currently in. Okay, so let's dive into some of the bays. So starting on the passenger rear, back double bay. Again, you get, you know, keys, double lock latches. In the back, we've got a little bit of mechanical storage here. Here's where your batteries are. You also have this diesel heating and hot water. This is where most of your water mechanics are going to be. In the next bay, which is just to the left of the door to the living quarters, is your first primary storage bay. You do have some courtesy outlets up here, and in most cases, you know, you can fit, if you stand up your bags, like your typical standard travel suitcase, you can get 4 of them in comfortably with additional space for maybe a small Pelican, like a Pelican Air. Second, just to the right of the door, is your second storage bay, a little bit smaller. You can get 3 standard rolling suitcases upright. And the final bay on the passenger side is, again, another storage bay, really looking at 2 to 3 full-size suitcases. Over on the driver's side of the coach, the first bay we have up front, again, double latch. You're gonna see double latch pretty much everywhere. This is sort of an access point to your diesel tank, which we'll talk about the fuel and all of the cab items a little bit later. Our second bay is another storage bay similar to the ones we have on the opposite side, on the passenger side of the coach. And you're looking at 3 to 4, you know, full-size suitcases. Another storage bay next to this one. Typically this will contain some items for bus mechanics. The next bay back on the driver's side is where your generator is. Really, in most cases, unlike the Bandwagon, you know, you're not really going to be messing with this too much. The next bay right behind the driver rear wheel well is going to be your shore power access. And then the final bay on the driver's side of the Yoda Coach is going to be your water and your tanks. One thing I like about this particular tank as opposed to the Bandwagon is you can actually see the water level. So you can see, you can kind of hit it and you'll see it moving down there. This is where you fill it up. The hose just slips right in and it fills up pretty quick. It's actually a pretty small tank. I don't have the exact number of gallons. We've had to fill it up more often than with a Bandwagon because of the size. So keep that in mind if you are you know, using water a lot or showers. It's gonna run quicker than it's gonna run out quicker than a Bandwagon. On the back side here, we have our tanks. Now notice our gray water and our black water actually come together and they come out of this nozzle here. Otherwise, you have your two latches here for pulling your black and your gray respectively. Okay, and here we are in the interior cab of the Yoda Coach. One big difference from a Bandwagon is that you don't have a back bunk like you do in the Bandwagon for, you know, the driver to sleep or whatnot. You also don't have a clear window breakthrough. When you turn on the Yoda Coach, functions very similarly to the Bandwagon. Turn the key halfway to let all the electronics power up. The air brakes start to fill up with air, and then it turns over just like any standard truck. Window controls, lock controls, turn signals, wipers. Your hazards are over here on this side. Light controls, fuel gauge, your def over here. You do have cruise control available. It's right here. Let me turn that. You can set your cruise control, which is great. Then you do have some control of the stereo system. Shifting module is very similar to what you've seen in a Bandwagon. Gear shifts if you need it, neutral, reverse, drive, etc. One thing that's really nice is we do have a backup camera, actually two cameras on the Yoda Coach. One that's just off of the top of the tail of the coach, and then you actually have this 360 camera, which kind of is nice for spatial awareness. Even with a trailer, to be honest, this is super helpful, just being able to see how the angling, the adjustments of the trailer are happening in real time. Stereo system here that has Bluetooth capabilities. This is a huge upgrade in my opinion from what we're used to in a Bandwagon. You can connect to your phone. It's got a pretty decent sound system in there, which is great for directions. It's great for listening to music, you know, podcasts, whatever on those long drives. And then you do have some USB power here as well as this standard cigarette 12-volt lighter with if you want to have your USB adapter. That's what we've done here. The seats do have the air seats on them, so you do kind of get that bounce factor when you're on those bumpy roads, which is nice. Climate control is great. It gets very cold in here, just like the Bandwagon for the most part. Most of these other things related to suspension we don't really mess with. We do actually have, you can adjust the you can do some self-leveling with the air suspension, which we haven't had to do quite yet. Up top, nothing super extraordinary, but just kind of showing you so you know. You got a little bit of storage here, got some overhead lights, more storage. You got your visors down here if you need them, more storage over there, and then very similarly for your passenger, you've got some air control, window control. It's kind of interesting having this little door window. I don't know exactly what that's for, but you've got it. Okay, let's talk about some of the tanks that we have here. For starters, the fuel tank on the 2026 model, we only have a single diesel fuel tank on the driver's side, which is located right here. You can kind of get access to it through that front bay. That is one difference from the Bandwagon, is that you kind of get, in my opinion, half the amount of fuel you can carry at one time. Now on the passenger side of the truck is where your def is. The truck stop, your def pumps are typically going to be on the driver's side. So we've had to actually, we purchased a def tank canister and we've just been refilling it as we needed to. But the def tank itself is also very tiny. This is actually the entire tank right here. I should also say that unlike the Bandwagon, the Yoda Coach is able to run in neutral, unlike the Bandwagon, which auto shuts off for emissions protocols. This has a clean idle certification. Okay, now we're gonna go into the interior of the Yoda Coach, which of course the door is on the passenger side here. We do have a numerical code for entry, as well as some physical key if you need that kind of access. When you open it and when you unlock it, you'll notice that the footsteps will come out and slide out like this. That can be enabled or disabled depending on your preference of having it out at all times or not. All right, now when you step into the coach, this is kind of what you walk into. Giving you a little pan here. We'll kind of start at the front. As you see here, we have a pretty large couch section. We've been able to fit easily 6-7 people on here, so considerably more seating space from something like a traditional Bandwagon. You do have cup holders on top of the couch on both sides here. One interesting kind of nuance is that All of the outlets are on the ceiling or like above overhead on the cupboards here. Even at the table, you don't have a power strip on the table, which is kind of an interesting decision. So just mentally, be prepared for that. Outlets are on the ceiling. Also, it did not come with curtains, so we had to go to Walmart and purchase these kind of like cheap papery curtains to put up. You do get 2 TVs in the front lounge section area, which is nice. With what they provide, you can sort of like watch 2 different screens from either side or mirror them together. It's also great for gaming. We brought our Xbox, and so we're able to play games on either side, which is great. Going through some of the cupboards, this first cupboard up in the front of the lounge is really just like a large storage cubby. You do have some access to power in here, but there's plenty of room for all kinds of bags, pillows, blankets, etc. The rest of the cupboards are pretty similar to what you'd get in like a Bandwagon vertical lift, and then they all connect, so that's kind of one thing to plan for, is that things could slide from one cupboard to the other. But you've got 3 on this side, on the passenger side, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 accessible on the driver's side. The AC units function just like the Bandwagon units in terms of their capacity, but one major difference is that your climate control is actually mounted over here. Let me turn the light on. So very much like a Prevost bus, you kind of have zones you can control, and you can set your temperatures from here, as opposed to like in the Bandwagons, controlling them from each individual unit. And I will say, so far, knock on wood, we haven't had any issues with the ACs frosting over or breaking down. I will also say that having the hardwood floors makes it a lot easier to clean up, easy to get a broom in here. On the passenger side here, by the first set of bunks, we have sort of a control panel, which is very similar to what you might find in an RV. You have your typical water pump toggle here, battery, step lock, that's for the step outside if you want to keep it locked in place. You have a variety of lights, exterior, interior, courtesy lights, galley lights, things like living room lights, hallway lights, which is right behind me here, overhead lights. And you do also have some control of the amount of light, so you can dim, for example, the hallway lights if you wanted to set a certain kind of vibe, or if it was maybe too bright one morning or something. I should also say that there is no like under couch storage here. There's no drawers like you find with Bandwagons, so storage space is kind of limited. Underneath the bench seats here for the table is where we've been putting like our water, for example. Both sides open up and can be used for storage. Over in the kitchenette area here, we have a microwave. It does have a lock on it, so you can lock it so that if you're moving and trying to use it, it doesn't fly open and the plate flies out at you, which is great. It also does have an air fryer setting, which is super popular. Makes it a lot easier to cook on the road. You have a small little wet sink situation here for water. Below the sink is where you have some storage for like a garbage can. I will say, unlike the Bandwagon, there's no overtop or overhead waste disposal hole like there is in the Bandwagons. Also, the trash bin itself that the bus comes with is pretty small, so we are finding ourselves having to take out the trash more often. The refrigerator is definitely an upgrade from what you typically get in like a Bandwagon. It's a very nice, large, double-sided fridge, variety of controls for temperatures and things like that. And the freezer as well is quite large down below, pull-out freezer with a couple different layers, so you could definitely get a lot of stuff in here, which is nice. It is located sort of in this alleyway going back to Bunk Alley, which is sometimes problematic if you're having a lot of people coming and going. For the most part, it's pretty functional, pretty helpful to have it here. And again, the size of it is really nice. You can put a lot of stuff in there. In terms of pantry space, there's not really a whole lot to work with. Typically, band members or crew might, each take one of these cupboards. This one here above the microwave is what we're using for most of our like forks, spoons, plates, that sort of thing. Kind of a communal cupboard, if you will. Below the refrigerator, this is where you're gonna find the control panel for the fuses if you ever need to get in there. There you go, there's your main. You can see that you have these notes for what the fuses are for. And here's an outlet that is down to the ground on the side. One of the few that are not mounted on the ceilings. Okay, now we're looking at bunks. In total, on this particular model of Yoda Coach, there are 9 bunks total, 3 of which are located out in the main galley area here. And then as you enter into Bunk Alley, of course, there are 3 on either side stacked up like so. The main access point to Bunk Alley is with a swinging door. So if you're used to touring in a Prevost, oftentimes you'll have a sliding door that goes in and out. I tend to prefer those because with the swinging door, you kind of limit your access to these bunks when you open the door. But the benefit is you can do things like these shoe hangers that we bought for either side, which has been great for keeping shoes off the ground. Okay, so let me show you what the inside of one of these bunks looks like. This is my bunk here. The first thing you'll notice that's kind of different is that the middle level bunks have windows. So this side, driver side, middle, and passenger side, middle. He's got a curtain up on his. They do have windows. Now these windows are technically emergency escape windows. So they're not windows that you're really supposed to open. In fact, you can see I have a tarp here because we had to have the company come out and reseal this window because it was leaking a little bit. But these windows are intended primarily for emergency exit purposes, which is a little bit tricky because you can see you have your lever here down low, and if you're laying on the bunk, it's very easy to accidentally hit this or open this. So just one thing to be aware of is that if you are in these middle bunks, you're gonna have this emergency exit access here. The bunks themselves do come with a pillow and a blanket, just like Bandwagon. I will say the mattress and the sheet material is very comfortable. I think this is probably one of the most comfortable bunks that I've personally ever slept in. It's also significantly larger. I don't know if you can really tell from this angle or this shot, but you can lay in here and get your knees all the way up. You can turn around, there's plenty of room, and that applies to all of the different bunks. And just to show you, here's a bunk up here without a window, just to kind of give you a comparison. Okay, now in terms of the amenities inside the bunks, a couple things to note. For starters, you do have a light. It's this light strip on the back. There's a button here that you push and it turns on this very bright light. Very bright, works great. It lights up the whole bunk, and of course it's behind you, so it's not blinding you in the eyes. You do have each bunk has a fan like this with 2 primary settings, you can see here. So when it's off, it's in the middle. This is kind of a low setting, and then the other side is a high setting. Of course, you have a 2 outlets here located kind of at the head of the bunk. Also in Bunk Alley, just like in the front of the bus of the Yoda Coach, you have one of these AC units, also controlled from the climate control meter in the main galley. Okay, and now the final room on the Yoda Coach is of course the bathroom, which is also behind a swinging door, kind of like at the front of Bunk Alley here. It does come with some hangers on the back where we've been putting our towels. The bathroom itself is actually pretty nice in terms of how clean it is, and it's relatively comfortable. One thing that's kind of different about this from like a Bandwagon is that the toilet is in the shower room. So if somebody wants to use the toilet, but someone's taking a shower, they're gonna have to wait for them to be done. Whereas like in a Bandwagon, for example, if you're familiar, the toilet has its own separate room from the shower so that you could use them interchangeably or at different times. Switch here for power, that's the same kind of switch you're gonna find throughout the entire Yoda Coach. You have some fan controls for the overhead fan here. We actually ended up going out and buying some more of these command hooks for more towels. The shower is really nice. I'm a big fan of kind of like the way the shower is designed, and it's quite spacious. It's got this sliding glass door, and when you're on the road, there's also a way with this little mechanism here to, hold on, doing it with one hand, you can lock it so that if you're moving around a lot on the road, it's not going to swing or break. And it does appear to be real glass, so The shower itself, you kind of have a few settings. You have almost like an overhead. You have this one kind of move around and use on your body. And then you have these two sort of horizontal jets that can be turned on. You can choose which one you use based on where you have your settings. So that's like the overhead. This is the this guy here, and then the far side is the individual jets. Temperature wise, this way is your heat, that way is your cold. You turn it and then you pull it out when you want to turn the water on. So there's that guy right there. The water does get very hot very quickly. I've never had an issue with cold water or any of the temperature being wrong. Pretty small little sink area, a little bit of storage room here. Typical hot, cold settings for the water. You do have an outlet here, so if you have a hair dryer or something you need to use, it's over on this side. Underneath the sink, obviously access to the pipes as well as a small trash can. Then you have a mirror that comes standard with it, some place to hang some towels. Over on the right side, you kind of have a variety of storage options. Some shelves up here, open face shelves here, and then you have two cabinets here that you can use for additional storage. So there you go, guys. This is the Yoda Coach. Again, this is the 2026 model. Honestly, it's great. It's comfortable. Got kind of like that clean new car smell to it. Plenty of seating. Some nuances we have to kind of overcome and learn about, like the outlets being on the ceilings and shower and toilet room. But in general, great alternative to a bus, like a Prevost or Entertainer coach. And it's been a great time being in this so far. If you guys have any questions about anything you saw in this video about the Yoda Coach, or maybe even about Bandwagon, if you saw my other video and you have questions, let me know in the comments. I'm happy to answer any questions you have, maybe make some follow-up videos. If you want to get in touch with Yoda Coach, you can just go to their website. I'll put a link in the bio. Also, be sure to follow the page, like the video, comment. It all helps the page grow, so I'm really grateful for any of that stuff that you guys can do. Thanks so much, guys, and I will see you in the next video.